I've told this story maybe 100 times. At rallies, at cookouts, in the back of the clubhouse on a slow Tuesday night when one of the younger guys asks me what it means to ride with a code. I always start the same way. I was drinking bad coffee at a diner on Route 40 when I watched a man try to erase a woman and her baby from the face of the earth. Not with violence. Just with indifference. Which, I've come to believe, is worse. It was the second week of December, and Greensburg had turned mean the way small Indiana towns do in winter, the sky the color of old pewter, the wind coming off the fields with nothing between it and your teeth. I'd pulled off Route 40 around 9 in the morning on my way back from dropping a part to a brother 2 counties over. Pratt's Diner was the only thing open on that stretch, a long low building with chrome stools and a window that fogged over at the corners. I took a seat at the counter, ordered coffee, and didn't intend to talk to anyone. She was in the third booth from the door. A young woman, maybe 24 or 25, in a winter coat that had seen too many winters. She had a baby girl on her lap, 18 months old, maybe 2, big dark eyes, wearing a knitted hat with a pom-pom on top that had come half unraveled. The woman had a cup of hot water in front of her. Not tea. Just hot water, because hot water is free. She'd torn open 2 packs of saltines from the condiment basket and was feeding them to the little one small cracker at a time, and the baby was eating like it mattered, the way kids eat when they haven't had enough. I watched that for a while without meaning to. Then the manager came out from behind the pass-through. He was a thick man in a white shirt with a grease stain near the pocket, and he had the particular face of a person who has appointed himself the last line of defense against the world's inconveniences. He stood at the edge of her booth and spoke to her in the voice people use when they've already decided the conversation is over. I couldn't hear every word from the counter, but I heard enough. Something about the booth being for paying customers. Something about a 30-minute limit. She said something quiet back to him. I could see her chin go up a little, see her hold the baby closer, and he said something else, and then he went to the phone on the wall behind the register and made a call. 11 minutes later a county deputy came through the door. He was young, maybe 26, and he had the look of a man who'd been called to do an unpleasant thing and had decided the fastest way through it was straight. He spoke to her without crouching down, without softening anything. She gathered the baby up and put the rest of the crackers in her coat pocket and walked to the door with her head level and her jaw set, and the baby looked back over her shoulder at me with those big dark eyes, and the pom-pom on her hat swung, and they went out into the December cold. I left a 5 on the counter for the coffee I hadn't finished and followed them. She'd parked around the side of the building, which I understood immediately, away from the window, so nobody inside could see her get back into it. It was a 10-year-old sedan with a crack running the length of the rear windshield, and through the glass I could see a laundry basket wedged between the back seat and the door, a box of diapers, a plastic tub with a lid. She had the engine running before I got to her door. She didn't look at me when I knocked on the window. She just closed her eyes for a second, like she was steeling herself for one more thing. I held up both hands so she could see I wasn't holding anything, and I took a step back, and I waited. After a moment she cracked the window 2 inches. I said I wasn't trying to make her day harder. I said I'd seen what happened inside and I was sorry it happened. She said she didn't need anything from me. I said that was all right, and I didn't move, and after a little while she cracked the window another inch. Her name didn't matter and I didn't ask it then. What came out of her in the next 20 minutes, in pieces, in that cold parking lot with the baby making small sounds in the back seat, that's what mattered. Her husband had been National Guard, activated, deployed. He'd been killed 14 months before, in a training accident overseas that the paperwork had somehow made complicated. The death benefits had been delayed, then partially denied, then caught in a review. The review had been ongoing for 9 months. She'd gotten one emergency payment in the first month and nothing consistent since. She'd been working 2 jobs until 6 weeks ago, when the baby got a respiratory infection and she'd had to miss enough shifts that both jobs let her go within a week of each other. She'd lost the apartment 2 weeks after that. She'd been in the car since the 1st of December. 11 days. She said her husband had been recommended for a commendation before he died. A junior soldier in his unit had told her that much, but the paperwork had never come through. She said she'd stopped believing paperwork came through. She said a lot of things had stopped coming through. She said it in a voice that wasn't angry anymore, which was the part that got me. Anger I understand. Anger means you still believe something should be different. Her voice was the voice of a person who had started adjusting to the shape of a world that had no place for her. I told her to keep the engine running. I walked around to the far side of my bike and I made 2 phone calls. The first was to our chapter president. I told him what I'd seen and what she'd told me. He asked me one question: "How old's the baby?" I told him. He said give him 20 minutes. The second call was to a brother 2 chapters over who I knew did Veterans Affairs advocacy work on the side, had for years, quietly, the way he did most things. I told him the situation in 2 sentences. He said he'd start pulling threads immediately. I went back to her car and I told her nobody was leaving. She looked at me through the cracked window for a long moment. The baby had fallen asleep against the laundry basket. She said she didn't understand what that meant. I said it meant she could turn the radio on if she wanted, or not, and that either way I'd be right there, and that some friends of mine were on their way. The first 4 bikes came down Route 40 minutes later. By 11 in the morning there were 31 of them in that parking lot, and the manager had come to the window twice and gone back inside both times without opening the door. By noon the number was 67. By 1 o'clock, when the deputy's cruiser came slowly down the county road and slowed in front of the lot and then kept going without stopping, there were 90. They came from 3 chapters. They came from a chapter 2 states over whose president had gotten a call from our president at 10 in the morning. They came on roads that were near frozen, in December cold, because one of our own had made a phone call and said there was a young widow with a baby living in her car outside a diner and someone needed to stand between her and the rest of it. 143 riders, by the time the last group came down off the county road at 1:30. They didn't rage. They didn't break anything. They stood in that lot in their leather cuts and their riding boots, engines off, and the weight of them, the sheer, undeniable fact of them, was sufficient. The manager did not come back to the window. The deputy did not return. What the club did in the next 4 hours was quiet and organized and thorough. A brother who owned rental property 2 miles from that diner had a unit sitting empty. He made a call. By 3 in the afternoon, we had a key. 4 brothers went ahead to turn on the heat and the water. 2 more made a run to a second-hand furniture place on the south end of town whose owner, when he heard what it was for, refused to let them pay retail. They loaded a truck with a bed frame, a mattress, a crib, a kitchen table, 2 chairs, and a couch that had some life left in it. A brother's wife and her sister met us there with bags of groceries, baby food, formula, diapers, a box of clothes in the right sizes that they'd put together out of what their own kids had outgrown. She rode in one of our trucks, the baby in her lap, and she didn't say much the whole way. When we pulled up to the apartment and she saw the lights on inside and the curtain someone had thought to hang over the front window, she pressed her hand over her mouth and held it there for a moment. I stood behind her so she wouldn't feel crowded. The baby reached up and put a hand on her mother's jaw, the way babies do, just patting, and that was the thing that undid most of us standing in that hallway. The brother doing Veterans Affairs work called back late that afternoon. He'd gotten a contact at the regional VA office, a real one, not a voicemail box, and he'd confirmed what the young soldier in her husband's unit had told her. Her husband had been recommended for a combat readiness commendation 2 weeks before the accident. The recommendation had gone through. The certificate and the paperwork had been processed and then misfiled inside the same administrative backlog that had held up her benefits. It had been sitting in a regional office for 11 months. Our brother had it moving. He said a physical copy would be delivered to her door within 2 weeks. It came in 9 days. I drove it over myself. It was a Tuesday morning, cold and clear. She answered the door in a sweatshirt with the baby on her hip, and for a second she didn't know what she was looking at. I held the envelope out and told her what was inside. She handed me the baby without a word, just transferred her into my arms like it was the most natural thing, and the baby grabbed my beard with both fists, and she opened it at the kitchen table. She read it through twice. Then she set it flat on the table and put both hands on it, palms down, like she was making sure it was real. I stood there with her daughter pulling my beard and the winter light coming through the curtain, and I didn't say anything, because there wasn't anything to say that would have fit inside that moment. What her husband had done in the days before he died, the decision he'd made, the risk he'd taken to bring 2 of his soldiers back to cover, it was in those pages. It had been true the whole time. The paperwork had failed him. The system had failed her. But the thing he'd done was real, and now she had proof of it in her hands, and she could show it to their daughter someday, and the daughter would know. She looked up at me after a while. She said, "How do you thank 143 people?" I told her she didn't have to. I told her that was the whole point. Every year since, on the second Saturday of December, we ride down Route 40 and turn into the parking lot of Pratt's Diner, though it's under different management now, as things sometimes go, and we keep going, slow, past the apartment building 2 miles down, and someone always leans on a horn once as we pass, and if the weather's clear she'll be standing on the front step with her daughter beside her. The little girl is 6 now. She waves at every single bike, one by one, counting under her breath. I think about her father sometimes when we make that turn. About a man who did the right thing at the right moment even when it was costly, and never knew he'd get credit for it. About how the truth of a person can sit in a misfiled envelope for 11 months and still be the truth. That's what this is, when you strip it down. Not leather and engines and the rumble of 143 machines on a county road. Just the stubborn belief that the truth of a person is worth fighting for, worth riding for, even when the paperwork has given up. Especially then.